Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Father-Son Packers podcast, your brand new source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. Coming to you after 6 games awaiting, or 5 games awaiting, however you want to count it, a Packers victory. The Packers win 31-28 in overtime over the Dallas Cowboys in Lambeau, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, my dad, Matt. Dad, how are you doing?
Hallelujah. I was
beginning to think we were part of the problem. I thought we might be cursed. I thought we might need to shut down the doors, but close the doors, shut down, change the locks.
I wore a different Packer shirt today.
Oh, okay, so you contributed. You were part of this win.
I changed from my kind of standard green Packer shirt to my Packers Super Bowl championship shirt from, whatever how many years ago it was.
You know what they say? It's only weird if it doesn't work.
Yep.
And, we're just doing our part out here, just trying to get the Packers in gear. But seriously, though, the Packers, I think, not a perfect game, but they won. And I think, it's nice to win a game. I think, do you want to start us off with our gut checks?
Do you want to let me pitch the...
Oh, yes, of course. How could I forget? For these pitches... We do these podcasts twice a week, these post-games on Sunday night after the game, and then pre-games usually on Thursday night, although this week we will try and be doing it earlier in the week since the Packers will be playing Thursday night versus the Titans, and we will be there.
And we were going to be there
at the game.
Freezing cold, just as the weather starts to head south and the thermometer's plummeting. That's when we finally make it to a game this year.
Yes, but getting to the point, if you would like to follow when new episodes are coming out, what new Packers news is happening around Green Bay, new articles that are written that we find interesting, come follow us on Twitter, at FatherSonPacker. Hit us with a follow, keep up with that news, and then also, it would really help our numbers if you came and subscribed to us on YouTube, Father Son Packers Podcast. Hit us with a subscribe, like a couple videos, would really help the algorithm for us, would really help us get more listeners, and we would really appreciate it. But anyway, those are the pitches we had to get out of the way. Dad, do you want to get into our injury update? Oh no, first, our gut
reactions.
I'm just so not used to winning. I am besides myself at the organization of this podcast.
After 5 weeks in a row, we've totally lost what we're supposed to do after a win.
I know, it's uncharted territory. But do you want to start us off with your gut check?
But I'd say this is probably the best I felt after a game
besides the Bears game.
Last year's Rams game.
No,
just in general
really?
about
okay.
How this feels great.
10 out of 10 would recommend actually winning a game. You should try it sometime. Anything more on your gut check, or should I go to mine?
It was just nice to see them actually, have their own gut check in the middle of the game and turn things around when they looked like they were going south.
Yeah, I mean, my gut check, I like that they didn't fold. I think it's the biggest thing. They were down 2 scores in the fourth quarter, and they could have given up. They were playing against a team that's, I think, is still better than them. They kind of got lucky a few times, which, man, they had not gotten lucky all year long. And so some of the luck kind of came back and evened itself out today. But it's just nice to win. It's nice to be podcasting after a win. It's nice to talk about a win. It's nice not to be sad and depressing all the time. I don't know if this fully changes my view of the team as a whole for the season, but it feels better than if they would have lost. So that's my gut check.
Yep, it was just to reverse some trends that they had been stuck in, which we can talk about a little bit later as well.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing, though, is that coming back from some adversity, I think this might be some of the most adversity that this team has persevered through under Matt LaFleur. Is it crazy to say that? On the field, at least, in game? In terms of you're down a ton of defensive...
I'm trying to remember
You're down a ton of defensive starters.
Deficit they've
come
back from under LaFleur. I don't remember. And then they had all some people missing.
Yeah, when you think about who was missing on defense, who was missing on offense, the fact that you're on a 5-game skid, you're at home, you are going to go into the half with a lead and they score, and then they get 2 quick scores coming out of the half, and you're down 14, and there's an elephant sitting on your chest, and it'd be so easy to just roll over. And I hate to give a little gold star, but hey, Cowboys are a good team, and they came back from a 14-point deficit, and they won the game, and I think that shows a lot of character and a lot of heart. But anyway, let's move on into our injury update for this game. So pretty clean injury report for the Packers in this one. Knock on wood, obviously.
It's a nice change from last week's.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to regress to the mean at some point, right? But anyway, Dallin Levitt was getting checked by trainers after a kick return. So unclear on. I wasn't sure. Did you see him come back in?
I don't remember. It's. I'd have to look. You almost have to look at the all 22 to see who's in there on some of those special teams plays.
Agreed. But anyway, so keep an eye on him going into this week, and then both Devontae Wyatt and Christian Watson had to leave with injuries, but they were able to come back. Christian Watson, especially, it was very important that he was able to come back, but we'll talk about that soon because this was the Christian Watson breakout game. But anyway, Dad, do you want to go into our offense, or do you want to? How are you feeling about this? Because since this is a more upbeat episode, I kind of want to get the medicine of the stuff we weren't so crazy about on offense and defense out of the way first, and then we'll end on a good note.
Right, because even though this was an exciting and fun game to finish, it still had some frustrating and tense moments throughout, especially through some of the middle of the game. So my bad things on offense.
Well, first, do we want to touch on? Let's touch on actually first what we wanted to see from the offense going into this game.
There was the stuff we were pre-game, the things we were looking at to see the Packers do.
Yes. So if you weren't able to check our pregame, normally we have a segment on what we want to see the Packers do on offense, on defense, how we want to see them approach the game, because we think that there are ways that they could get more meat off the bone, so to speak. For me, in this one on offense, I really wanted to see them just run the ball and use that to take away Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence from this game, because their pass rush was crazy, but their run defense that we talked about in pregame was so-so. And check. They ran the ball really well, that we'll get into. And then, Dad, you wanted to see more DeGuara, and you wanted to see them use the young wide receivers more. How do you feel that they did that?
Yeah, so DeGuara, I'd have to look at the snap count to see. I noticed him a few times in there with some lead blocks, which is kind of what we were hoping for. In terms of actual usage, it was non-existent.
Yeah.
He didn't have a single target.
I think I would say just eyeball-wise, he played a decent amount of snaps, but not quite as many as last week.
And then the wide receivers, it was the Watson show for the young wide receivers.
Yes, it was the Watson show.
Teray didn't get a single target. And Amari didn't get in on offense, I don't think.
I saw him a couple times.
Okay,
he was in for a few snaps, but I don't think
Teray was doing a lot of the jet motion.
Yeah.
Today, that he was in there for a lot of that jet motion, even though he wasn't getting targeted. But it was the Watson. He's going to be a superstar now. Breakout show.
We'll see. Even
if it wasn't perfect,
he did have several drops. So let's all just keep that in mind. But yes, it was the Watson show today.
Are you slowing my roll?
I am slowing your roll. I'm taking the jelly out of your donut, as they would say in Snatch. Great movie, by the way.
Tommy. Tommy.
Yes,
Tommy. Are you taking the jelly out of my donut?
Nope, that's not what it is. But yes, that's not the quote, but yes. But let's go into the offense since we're already talking about it. And let's get the bad out of the way first. Dad, do you want to start us off with some of the things you weren't super crazy about from the offense?
Yeah, so my bad things were the end of regulation, the end of that last series. That was a totally blown opportunity and a real mess on third down. They had to call a timeout. And then the play was just he had a ton of time, but it was just a mess.
Yeah.
That they 3rd and 1, and they just needed a little bit more to try. They needed 15 more yards?
Yeah.
To try to get into field goal range.
And all you needed was a field goal.
Right. And they did not go for the conversion. They went, they decided to go, I think, for the whole shebang, as it were. And then going back to earlier in the game, that the first 2 drives on offense were kind of a continuation of last week against the Lions, where they're moving the ball, they're getting yards, and then it just kind of stalls out, and they don't end up with anything. They short on and wide on a field goal attempt and a punt on the other. And then the other bad thing in terms of a social thing I had was the 3-and-out that the offense had right after Dallas took the 21-14 lead after the Amari fumble. It's like there's a chance to try to, the offense to do something to try to get the momentum back, and it just nothing happens.
Yeah, and I think overall a lot more good than bad this game for the offense. But for me, that 3-and-out's a really good note because I hadn't written that down, but I do remember it now, and could not have come at a worse time. I mean, it felt then that the air was sucked out of the stadium.
Yeah.
And I think my two negatives for the offense, I didn't have a lot here, but I will say, where was it? The Christian Watson drops, as I mentioned. He did have 2 drops to start the game. That really, it was second and third down back-to-back, and he dropped both of them. And
each one would have been a first down.
Yeah, and would have been pretty big gains. And then the other one was, I think we could have seen more passing game work for the running backs. Only a combined 2 targets between Jones and Dillon. I just think get your playmakers the ball more. I know that Jones had, how many carries was it in this game? He had
24 carries and 2 targets.
Yeah, and Dillon had 12 carries and no targets, which is, I guess, fine. 24 carries.
13 carries for Dillon.
Okay, well, anyway, 26
but
opportunities for Jones and then 13 opportunities for Dillon is all right, but I would like to see them get some more work in the passing game. But we are picking nits because I think this was overall a pretty positive from the offense. Dad, do you want to kind of touch on what you liked from the offense? Since I think that's more substantive here because I think it was a nice day for them. I mean, scored 31 points on a good defense.
Yeah. And it's a lot more than my predicted points, I think, which were 10. So they crushed that number.
I had the Packers scoring 7 points in this game.
So I was closer.
I mean, I thought you scored 9 points on Detroit. You don't have a chance in hell of scoring 31 on Dallas, but here we are at home.
It just shows that I think in some ways how close they've been, and they've managed to make mistakes, like one mistake per drive.
I did send out something, I think it was Murphy's Law at one point, because it seemed that anytime they got any kind of momentum, that they just shot themselves in the foot or they got a penalty and it just completely shut them down. Someone commented back, it's like, oh, you mean Mark Murphy's Law? Yes. But anyway, positives for the offense. Did you have...
So I had several different things. So one was that they stuck with the running game.
Yes.
And they had a total of 37 designed runs to only 20 passes, and I guess including the sacks and scrambles.
I think it's 24 dropbacks.
So almost like about 2-1. Shockingly, running plays,
like 1.7 to 1 or something, almost 2 to 1.
Oh, sorry, 1.5. Yeah, not 2 to 1.
Quick
so
math.
Much for math. It's like 1.5 to 1.
Yeah.
Quick math, 1.5 to 1. And that Jones and Dillon both average more than 5 or more yards per carry, and that people have been calling out for the offense to run through Jones, and he had 24 carries and 2 targets, so he had more touches than Roger on his own than Rodgers had throws.
Yeah, I mean, he's their best player on offense, and they kind of let him loose in this game, which was nice.
Yeah, and he looks good.
And he's one of the few guys on the team who can actually do something with the ball in their hands, which is why I said I would like more targets for him, but if you're handing him the ball that much, fair enough.
And then I had explosive plays.
Yep.
And this combines a little bit with that. So coming into today, Rodgers was 29th in completed air yards per attempt and 17th in intended air yards per attempt per Pro Football Reference. So
yeah.
The success rate was even lower than the attempted, so they were it was one of the worst QBs in the league in air yards per completion.
And they weren't throwing it down the field much, like you said. So
a lot of short passes, all these short. And so today, Watson was the first player for Green Bay with 2 touchdowns of 20 or more air yards since Jordy Nelson in 2014.
Wow.
For Rob Domofsky. He tweeted that out during the game.
I have some of these explosive plays written down. I mean, Watson's first touchdown, 58 yards. Watson's second touchdown, 39 yards. Lazard's catch in OT, 36 yards. Jones had a 17 and 23-yard carry, and then Sammy Watkins had a 23-yard catch. I mean, have they had that's 6 explosive plays in a game so far this year besides the Bears game?
I don't know how far back you have to go for that. And that I remember that Watkins 23-yard catch. That was on, 2nd and 21 or 2nd and 22. It was for a first down.
It was the back shoulder where Rodgers put it pretty much. You could not physically drop it.
As Greg Olson said, that pass caught itself.
Yeah, I mean, it was a beautiful pass from Rodgers. Rodgers was definitely dealing a little more in this one, I think, even though he was gripping out his hand a bit.
And then I had a couple more things on Watson as well. Besides those, I was nice to see him come back after the rough start with the 2 drops on the first drive.
Yeah, he said that. Just a quick anecdote. He said that they pretty much came to him on the sideline and said they're still going to come to him, and he's just going to have to stay ready. And that really gave him some confidence and was what propelled him to have such a good game. I mean, he had 107 yards on 4 catches and 3 touchdowns. I mean, great game from him. And just to spotlight that performance, that's excellent. We'll talk more about this specific performance later, but I think it's just a shout out to using positive reinforcement and positive leadership, using positive leadership on the sideline and trying to actually build your players up as opposed to yelling at them when they make mistakes. I mean, not everyone learns the same way, but I don't know.
And I'm hoping he'll start, plucking the ball out of the air with more confidence. But he had, to comment on his production, he was the first Packers rookie with, 100 yards receiving and 3 TDs since James Lofton in 1978.
You stole my stat.
Did I steal your stat?
Yes, you stole my stat. I have that at the bottom of I have that in my players of the game. But anyway, it's fine. Oh,
you have that in your players of the game.
I didn't look for it for a while or anything. I didn't source it. Matt Reynoldson, by the way, on Twitter is where I found my information.
I think personally. I saw it from Domofsky.
Okay. Well, anyway, I mean, yeah, I just think Christian Watson was... I think we should talk about him for a second because he was the spark plug of the offense. I mean, I went and looked. So that 58-yard touchdown to get their first score, I mean, it felt like they needed something like that because they were not able to string plays together. I think that was one of the... all of his plays were some of the biggest of the game. I mean, there was that one, and then they were down 14-28 in the fourth quarter on 4th and 7. If you look at ESPN, they had the Cowboys at a 96% chance of winning once Rodgers threw that incompletion on 3rd down. And then he hits Watson for the touchdown there, and it gets down to 80%, and then they're down 21-28 with, what was it, a few minutes to go, and he hits Watson on the crosser. Watson just runs away from, because he's way faster than any of these defensive backs for the Cowboys, and ties the game. I mean, he had 3 of their 4 scores, and 2 of the 2 to tie it up when they're down 14 late in the game, especially that 4th and 7. I mean, if they don't get that, I think the game is over.
Yeah, I think that was critical. They got all the way to the end zone. One thing about this, being able to put in some bigger plays. One of the things we've talked about is that the Packers struggle with all these long drives where they have to have 15, 16 plays. The chance of stringing all of those together without some drive-stopping mistake has just been too much of a problem.
And it's incredible how much having some speed on offense opens up other opportunities for other players. Because it seemed just so much easier for some of the other guys on offense when Watson was out there being more of a threat on offense. And it does make you wonder why they only have one guy with any kind of speed on offense. But
yeah, we've talked about this before.
It's the roster they have, and when
we have our one slot. We had our MVS, and now we have Watson.
It's why are you not allowed to have
spot is full?
Yeah, to have 2 speed guys. It couldn't hurt. Give it a try. But anyways, yeah, Watson was great in this game. For me, the good things that I had were obviously running game and overall balance. I mean, 5.5 yards per carry from the running backs according to ESPN. 207 rushing yards, 208 passing yards, perfectly balanced as all things should be. And then my big thing were the points off turnovers that I looked into today. They scored twice. They scored 2 touchdowns off of 2 interceptions by Dak, and then they scored a field goal off of a turnover on downs in overtime. So that's 17 points off of 3 turnovers. scoring on every single time they forced a turnover, if you include those turnover on downs, that is. And going into this game, I did the math, and the Packers have forced 9 turnovers on downs or otherwise, so picks, fumbles, turnovers on downs, where the offense got the ball back with realistic motive and time to score. And what I mean by that is I'm not counting the Justin Fields interception at the end of the game versus the Bears, where the Packers kneeled it out. I'm not counting the Giants' intentional safety, where the Packers got the ball back and had to essentially throw a Hail Mary. Rodgers got his thumb hurt on that play, so that was also extra fun. I'm not counting pick sixes, scoop and score, stuff like that, where the defense was the one scoring. I'm just counting on the offense getting the ball and trying to hold over the momentum that the defense has given them. And they had 9 such opportunities, and they had failed to score on 7 of 9 of those opportunities going into this game, scoring a total of 10 points. So they had only scored one touchdown. Only scored one touchdown.
Than 1 point per
turnover where the offense had an ability and like reasonable time, et cetera, to score. And to come into this game and go bat 3 for 3, I mean, that's way better to me. The numbers don't lie. It's a lot better. And I just think the ability to carry, I mean, we talk all the time about complementary football. And I think nothing illustrates that more than defense, thank you. We'll take it from here. And we won't shoot ourselves in the foot. Because if you remember that Lions game, they get a pick, they throw it right back. The Bills game, they get a pick, they throw it right back. It had just been like that all year long until this game. And so it's nice to see them actually capitalize there.
They turned the tables on the Cowboys in that regard.
Yes.
Which is nice.
It was nice to see. But
it was nice to get the second one of those this time instead of the first one.
Yeah.
Where you don't have it for very long.
But anyway, since we're already talking about interceptions, do you want to move on to defense?
Sure. Start with what we wanted to see?
Yeah. You want to lead us off there?
Yeah, so one thing I was looking for was whether or not Preston and Enagbare would be able to set the edge against the run in particular, because I think that we'd be getting gashed. And I would say that it seemed like most of their successful runs were actually up the middle and not swinging around wide. That in the second half, Pollard was starting to really get some momentum, but it was almost all up the... So I would say overall, it's like, yeah, I think they did an okay job setting the edge against the run.
Yeah, and I also had Enagbare and Preston on my list as well. I wanted them to step up. I mean, they each had a quarterback hit, but it's nothing crazy, but I would say they weren't the problem. I wouldn't be surprised if their grades for this game are better than Jaron Reed's, let's say, even though Jaron Reed had a very important play late, pressuring Dak Prescott on that 4th down. I was not very impressed with him this game. Same with Dean Lowry. Kenny was okay. I wanted him to step up this game, but he didn't make a huge impact. I know it's always difficult to tell with nose tackles what they're actually doing out there, but he hasn't made a lot of splash plays, as many splash plays as we're used to this year.
Yeah, he got credit for a sack today, but that was on sort of cleanup as Dak was scrambling away from almost getting tackled for a safety by, I don't remember who it was on the edge, a couple of people were coming in and closing in on Dak. He scrambles away, and then Kenny tackles him like a yard short of the line of scrimmage for a sack.
And then the other thing I wanted to see Quay look better. I thought he looked fine. I didn't notice anything too positive or negative from him. He had one really nice tackle on Pollard out in the flat that looked really good. And then he
was that early on?
Yes, it was very early.
I remember that one.
I noticed him less and less as the game went on, which isn't always a bad thing. So,
yeah, McDuffie actually he
led the team
in
tackles. Yeah,
13. I have to go back and look. Like, how many of those? How far downfield were those 13 tackles?
I couldn't tell you a single time he had a tackle. The fact that he had 13 is mystifying to me. I don't remember his name being called. Maybe not one time, but maybe I was just into the game at that point, which is probably true. And then you said you wanted to see more time for the younger... go ahead.
My younger D lineman, and I would say that I barely noticed if Slayton was out there. I mean, I don't know.
He was out there. I saw him.
But I don't think he did anything of note.
Yeah,
Really?
Wyatt was kind of in and out with injury, so it's been tough.
So we didn't really get a good look at him. But still, when he came back, I think he made a couple of stops. He made a couple plays.
Okay, because I didn't notice him.
I saw him make a stop or two when he came back. I think after the injury, in my rewatch, and Reed actually made a couple of tackles near the line of scrimmage as well as the grabbing Prescott's foot,
ankles and barely getting him,
so that he could not break away from there and get that first down or get a clean throw off, which was actually taking advantage of the pressure that Preston was making on that particular play, where he grabbed the ankles.
And there was a good amount of good from the defense today, I thought. But let's touch on the bad first, and then we'll talk about what we liked. But in terms of things that I wasn't crazy about from the defense. Another situational thing and the 2-minute drill, but this time going the other way. Defending the 2-minute drill before the half. I mean, they allowed an 8-play, 66-yard drive in 1 minute and 34 seconds, which completely annihilated any momentum you had going up 14-7. I mean, it looked like you were going to take a lead into the half. You should have taken a lead into the half. You should have had all the momentum at home, Cowboys reeling, and they just dink dunk, like pass underneath the far back zone the soft zone that you're playing. Dink dunk, they're running out of bounds. Like they're just running these 12-yard little curls and outs, and they're just hitting them for first downs, and they're running out of bounds. This doesn't prevent anything. They're getting like 12 yards every 8 seconds. Like that's not efficiency wise. The idea is that time is on your side, and you want to make them take time. But 12 yards every 8 seconds is the greatest offense ever. Like,
you can get the whole way down the field pretty quickly that way.
And then I thought they were a little undisciplined on defense. I mean, they gave up 2 free plays, one on Jaron Reed offside, and then one for too many men on the field. Composure penalties, organization penalties, where it felt like the coaching had them kind of out of sorts. And then another game where they struggled to take away the obvious number one option. CeeDee Lamb went for 11 catches for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. They're still playing super off soft coverage and doing it in yardage situations that don't make sense. And CeeDee Lamb just ate that up. I knew it was going to be a tough matchup coming into the game. Just because it's tough how much he moves around from the slot to the outside. But it's another game where they only really have one receiver.
Though Gallup made a couple plays, too, when he was able to come back from his injury.
He got knocked in and out of this game as well.
But, Lamb, there's one, even the announcers were talking about how Jair was lined up so deep that even though he broke on the throw, he was too far away to contest it. And I'd say overall, Jair had kind of a rough game.
Go of it, yeah.
He won some matchup. He won some. He knocked the ball away, broke up some passes, but he also got beat a couple times.
And he allegedly committed PI on the third down that was not called
in overtime,
right at the end of the game. That was not called. In overtime, yes. He got there early. I'd be comfortable saying it was probably pass interference. But
no comment.
I'm not going to apologize. There were tons of missed calls in that game. The refs were kind of all over the place. They were pretty inconsistent. That was a pretty high leverage call, but there's probably 4 or 5 going the other way that you don't think of that could have changed the game a million ways. Did you have anything else negative for the defense before we got to the positives?
Yeah, so I also was about that 2-minute drill before half, giving up that touchdown, and how much that just killed what they were doing.
Just gave it to them. It was so easy. It was such an easy drive.
The other thing, and I should have just popped this in here as well, because I had this as a special teams thing. That short kickoff that they did for that possession. Do they decided to squib it, or was that a mistake?
I'm here to tell you
intentional decision,
but
it turned out to really hurt them.
They didn't kick it into the end zone all game. I don't think. Just so you know, they had Ramiz Ahmed doing the kickoffs today because Mason Crosby's back, I think, flared up during the week.
It was his back.
I mean, he wasn't getting them very far. I don't know why he didn't
He was supposed to have the big leg.
I don't know why he didn't just have Pat O'Donnell do it and just not waste a 53-man roster spot. But
I don't understand. It almost looked like that was an intentional decision just so they could get a big return, and then they gave up really good field position.
Yeah, but this is a special teams thing, and I do want to have a special teams conversation. But let's keep going with the defense.
So get back. So there was that drive that they gave up 2 4th down conversions in regulation.
Yep.
And then the other thing that really hurt was that they gave up touchdowns on consecutive possessions after the fumble punt return. So that was like, it was the same thing. We see like mistake, fumble punt return, immediate touchdown,
back
3 and
back.
out,
yeah,
touchdown, and those were the next 3 possessions. 2 for the Cowboys and 1 for the Packers.
And just to note that that 3 and out is the Packers going 3 and out. That is not us. There's not a sandwich of good in there.
Yes, there's a Cowboys touchdown, a Packers 3 and out, and then a Cowboys touchdown right after the fumble punt.
Yeah, they snatched momentum from us very quickly in the second half, and we're going to talk about special teams, but. We're going to talk about special teams. But anyway, do you have anything more negative for defense, or should I go to my positives?
I would say overall, the middle of the defense on a lot of the runs, was getting pretty soft, and getting gashed up the middle by Pollard, especially as the game wore on. I don't know if they were getting tired out, but he was getting a lot of big gains there as the game wore on, and they all were going up the middle.
Yeah, and I mean, they let him go for 115 yards on 22 carries, which is 5.2 a carry. I mean, that's pretty elite. That's pretty good. And it's only bolstered by a long of 14, so pretty consistently getting chunks in the run game. But do you want to talk about good things on defense?
So let's go on to the good things.
Yeah, I'll go first. I think the big thing to me is, and we hadn't touched on this earlier, which I kind of wish we had now, but the coaching adjustment going into the game with the personnel and the decision to put Darnell Savage in the slot and Rudy Ford at safety in nickel packages was the perfect decision. I mean, Rudy Ford ends this game with 2 interceptions, probably 2 biggest plays of the game besides Watson's. I think outside of Watson's plays, the 2 biggest plays of the game. Kept them alive, essentially, in this game. Probably would have been pretty ugly without those 2 plays. I thought even without those 2 picks, he just made the defense look so much more fast, so much more active, so much more physical. He was way better at tackling in this game than Savage has looked all year. And just having a good tackler at safety, it makes everything look way cleaner. And having a guy fill in on the run defense from above is so much more effective when he can actually tackle the running back. Who would have thought?
I think the Cowboys' very first possession, he comes in for a run stop on Pollard to force that, as part of that first 3 and out.
Yeah, and Ford was good, and I thought Savage was pretty dang good in the slot.
I actually had one of my good things was also Ford was a big improvement at safety, but that even though he wasn't perfect, I thought Savage was a better player at nickel than he had been at safety.
Yep. I mean, I think it's just carrying over the idea of offensive line, you use your best 5. Defense, you should use whatever your best 11 is. And Savage had been having a really rough go of it at safety. Maybe this good start at slot corner and moving him there, kind of more and more of his snaps there over time, can kind of kickstart him back into maybe being a more productive player. He still did play some safety in this game in base looks. He played safety back there with Amos just as he has all year. Struggled just as he has all year, I feel like. But slot corner was a lot better. And then my other positive for the defense was the third down defense. Held the Cowboys to 5 of 15 on third down. That 33.33% mark would be 29th in the league for an offense. I know this is a really small sample size also, but in weeks 7 and 8, so that since Dak came back from his injury, they did play the Bears and Lions. That is the caveat, but they did go 12 of 20 on third down. So, I mean, they had been very, very, very productive on third down, although that is bolstered a bit. They did go 9 of 11 on third down versus the Lions. But held them to 5 of 15 is a great mark in this game, in my opinion. And so those are my 2 big positives for the defense. Dad, what did you have?
So I also had the same thing about the Rudy Ford, which we already talked about. One of the things I really liked to see was that out of, I think there's 11 Cowboys possessions, they were able to force 3 3-and-outs and 2 interceptions. So that's almost half of their possessions. They were able to get, a good stop. And I felt like they were able to get some pressure on Prescott, although it was inconsistent. They only had the 2 sacks. They again, like we had last time, like one of them was Adrian Amos happened to be closest to him when Dak ran out of bounds.
Yeah, but I do think it is important to temper expectations with the pressure when you don't have your best pass rusher.
You're missing your best pass rusher.
And you're already thin at the position.
But they were able to force a couple of hurried up throws that was part of how they got stops in some of those drives. They're willing to dial up some blitzes.
Yeah, they were actually they sent Savage off the corner a few times, which I like to see.
So that was
he still
nice
doesn't quite know what to do when he's getting there. And some well, the problem that I have with whenever they send defensive backs on a blitz, even if the running back lines you up, don't chop your feet. Because you're not gonna beat him. He outweighs you, and getting around him, there's not enough time. You just have to use your momentum and go straight through the running back as hard as you can.
I think it might have been Savage coming in on the blitz, and then he starts slowing down to juke or something. It's like, no momentum left. But there's one also where he comes in. Do you
think the quarterback's gonna wait for you to
finish that move?
Yeah, exactly. Like, do you think the quarterback is going to wait and see if it has... I mean, that's like 5 seconds in the pocket at that point.
Yeah, but it was nice to see, even though it didn't always get home, they caused a little havoc with some variety in blitzes in their pass rush. I think, getting that 4th down stop in overtime was huge to set up that winning drive. We're going to give them props for that. And then, actually, their 4th quarter and overtime defense was elite.
Yeah, and they needed it to be. There was no margin for error.
In the 4th quarter, here are the drives they gave up. A 25-yard drive, a 3-and-out, which was for 3 yards, and then the last second for 19 garbage yards. So they only gave up like 28 real yards in the 4th quarter on 2 possessions.
And for the first time it felt like when, because normally I feel like for this defense it's 3-and-out or 70-yard, 12-play, 10-minute drive.
They did have one of those.
I know they did, but it normally felt like one or the other. If the offense started rolling, they were just going downhill. But they actually got a stop after giving up a first down for 2 different times in the 4th quarter and overtime, which I thought was beyond this defense, quite honestly. But they buckled down, and I don't want to be cheesy and cliched, but they could have given up and they didn't. And they really stuck. I mean, the offense will get more buzz because of the big Christian Watson plays and coming back from 14 down. But the defense is the reason that Dallas didn't score again in that last quarter.
Yeah, they did their job and gave the Packers an opportunity by shutting the Cowboys out on their last however many drives. So like 4 or 5 drives.
Yeah, and especially when you consider all the pieces missing on this defense. Or not, but Gary and Stokes, you're starting outside corner and your best pass rusher. I mean, you're missing, and Devondre Campbell, you're starting middle linebacker, all-pro. Yeah. I mean, you're missing key players at key positions. But I thought the defense did pretty well, especially when you consider that context. Did you have anything else for the defense, or can we talk about special teams? We fence.
Let's talk about we fence. Can we build a fence around we fence?
Speaking of context, they brought Rich Bisaccia in. These numbers are not public, but it's pretty much reported that he is the highest paid special teams coordinator in the league. And the special teams is still bad. It's still really bad. I mean, you miss a 54-yard kick, which, fair enough, it's cold. Mason Crosby has a back injury. But you don't kick the ball off well or cover kicks well all night. You leave Amari back there at punt returner, and he fumbles twice. One of them he picks back up, but the second one completely completely swings momentum from Dallas in that. Was it in the second half or the first half? You remind me?
It was in the second half.
But it's just part.
Yes, it was in the second half.
It's just part of what made that second half comeback so daunting. Is it's not even Amari's fault anymore. I don't even blame him anymore. Why are you putting him in this position? He has 7 career fumbles, 8 career catches, or 8 career fumbles and 7 career catches? It's one of the two, and either way, it's bad. Eventually, the only saving grace for this special teams is they finally seem to be done with the Amari Rodgers at punt return experiment. They ended up putting Keyshawn Nixon, who they had already put in for kick returns, back at punt return near the end of the game. And that was an adventure, too. He caught it above his head with his hands in a triangle, like he's catching a fly ball, in baseball.
Still, it was an improvement.
No, yes, technically.
Yes.
Technically.
It was a clean catch. It was not bobbled. It was a
little bobbled.
Brain fart. It was like, what are you doing catching the ball inside the 5 in the first place and over your head in the second place?
Yeah, so I still think that they're going to need to bring in a punt returner, a designated punt returner on this team. I can't believe they can't find one out on the street somewhere. But I hope that today was the final nail in the coffin for Amari Rodgers, because the fumbles again today, it's been a problem. It's always been a problem. I'm done blaming him. I am on to blaming the people that keep trotting him out there every single week and expecting different results, because I tweeted this out, but the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, and it's not fair to Amari anymore. I'm sorry.
And they've been asked about it over and over again, and their answers I was like, well, he's doing it in practice. Like, I don't care. I don't care what he does in practice. We have seen over and over again that he's going to fail in the game at returning.
And I'm not even mad at Amari. It's not his fault anymore.
You don't even, it doesn't matter if he's doing it well in practice. Like, stop running him out there for punt returns.
You're setting him up to fail over and over.
Damaging his career by running him out there as a punt returner. Stop.
Yes. He might have a little bit of something left to salvage at receiver, but you are nuking all of that by trotting him back at punt returner. And I don't know. It doesn't make sense. I don't understand why the special teams, no matter how much money and actual roster positions. Okay, I'm not going to say it. It is definitely better than last year's, but it's not good.
It's still near the bottom of the league.
Yeah. At least it's not dead last.
It's no longer dead last like it was
last year and the year before.
Yep. Woo! Last year was one of the worst of all time. It was special. We had a special season.
But we're actually investing significant resources into it now, and it still isn't even to mediocre. And I don't know. It's just disappointing. I don't understand.
Say one thing that has improved.
The field goal kicking operation is not a nightmare anymore.
Coverage. Punt coverage and kick coverage.
Wasn't great today. Was not great today.
Today was a bad day. They gave up a couple, this is true. And maybe that's because Ford and Nixon were playing so much defense.
Yeah.
They're not out there.
And also part of it's your kicking short kicks with Ramiz Ahmed. And
he's supposed to be in there because he's got the big leg just for the kickoffs.
Yeah, if you're going to only kick it to the 4, why is Pat O'Donnell not just kicking these? I don't know.
I know, but that's been the problem they've had with Crosby is he's had one of the worst percentages in the league at getting it into the end zone and forcing touchbacks. That was been a problem all season.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think the special teams needs to be better, but I haven't been harping on it because the offense and defense have been so bad, so it hasn't really mattered. But it almost mattered again today, and it's mattered actually a lot of the time. They've had momentum. Part of the things of Murphy's Law for them has been just fumbling punts and just giving the ball right back after the defense gets a stop.
Yeah, that really hurts. The defense has to go right back out there with no rest.
Yeah. Do you have anything else you wanted to add? Did you notice Jonathan Abram, by the way, on special teams had 2 penalties? So great start to the career.
Yeah, he basically went face to face with somebody on the Cowboys, and they got
offsetting
penalties.
And I think he had a hold or a block in the back as well. But yeah, he didn't have a good game in his first suiting up for the green and gold. Should we move on to our closing thoughts?
Yes.
Okay, your player of the game or players of the game.
So my player of the game on offense was Aaron Jones.
Fair.
Who they actually, basically rode Aaron Jones for most of the game and did the work and had him work as much as almost everybody's been calling for so far this season. Average, what was it, like 5.7 yards per carry? I know Dylan was right exactly at 5, and Jones was more than 5.
ESPN has Jones at 5.8. 5.8 a carry.
5.8 a carry and a touchdown, and
the Marshawn Lynch celebration. Did you notice he did that?
The turn and dive?
Yes.
Because when he was going in for his touchdown, I was like, ooh, this almost looked like he could do the little wave again. Because
he just had the ball in the wrong hand. Someone said if he had the ball in the left hand, he would have done the wave. But Aaron Jones is a great pick. For my offensive pick, I had Christian Watson, 3 touchdowns and 104 yards, and actual explosion on offense is at a coming out party. That's going to get my vote every time. Who'd you have for defense?
So I see who you have for defense. Why don't you go first, and then I have a. I'll move on to.
I'd be surprised if we don't have Rudy Ford.
Rudy Ford is the obvious pick.
I mean, 2 picks, and the defense just looked better in nickel when he was out there than it has all year.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to the 2 picks, he also had 2 pass breakups.
I think those are the 2 picks. I think it includes.
The way they're doing the box score that I was looking at was
yes,
that's true.
Because I saw that as well.
But he did have a couple nice tackles, fill in run support a lot better than Savage had been doing. But just to go a little bit off script with Ford being the obvious case, I felt like Adrian Amos had a pretty good game.
You think? I didn't notice him much out there, but I noticed him
tackling pretty well in some of the plays.
Yeah,
I would say he made a few plays. So I'd have to go back and look to see if I go whether his play on the whole held up as more that I noticed a couple plays where he was making a play as opposed to Ford making the sort of the big plays.
Mm-hmm. Well,
where
nice.
He broke on the ball very nicely.
And then, do you have any last closing thoughts on the game in general? Because if I could just say mine, it's nice to get a win. Yeah, it's nice to get a win versus the Cowboys. It's always nice to beat the Cowboys.
It's always nice to beat the Cowboys. We got the win in the revenge game.
Yep, and it's just nice to break the skid too.
Yep, and a game where most people did not expect us to win. The vast majority of the picks were going against us.
Always good to win as the underdog.
We were the home underdog.
The home dogs, and got the win.
And got the win.
Feels good. But anyways, the Packers will be taking on the Titans in Lambeau on Thursday Night Football this week. So come check out our pregame this week. We will be tweeting out when it comes out. And then we will also be doing a postgame either that night, Thursday, or Friday morning, depending on our schedules. So keep an eye out for that. Again, follow us on Twitter at FatherSonPacker. It's where we're tweeting out all our new episodes, Packers news, Packers notes, articles we find interesting. And come subscribe to us on YouTube. It really help our numbers. Father Son Packers podcast on YouTube. But Dad, until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.